They didn't just test her patience, they targeted her right in front of 20 other recruits. A staff sergeant drove his knee into her ribs, the same ribs she'd had rebuilt after Helmand Province. He whispered, "Let's see if it breaks again." She didn't file a report, didn't ask for backup, didn't even raise her voice. She waited. And when the night drill started, when the lights went out, and the comms went live, she gave them the only lesson they'd never forget. Now, before we show you what happens when silence becomes strategy, drop a comment telling us where in the world you're watching from. Subscribe with the bell icon turned on, and get ready. Because this isn't about revenge. It's about control. And what happens when the wrong person mistakes your calm for weakness? The Mojave heat didn't just press down, it shimmered. Radiated off the sand like the whole desert was trying to breathe in reverse. At Camp Stryker, everything smelled hotter in the afternoon. Brass bullets that had been fired and recollected too many times. Sand ground into metal. Sweat dried over fabric. Rank embedded in dust. Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson stood just off the circuit perimeter with a stopwatch in one hand and a clipboard in the other. 36. Fatigues pressed sharp. Sleeves rolled exactly one thumb width below the elbow. Her left side was taped tight beneath the uniform. Not visible, but constant. A reminder she carried in her breath, not her posture. She didn't limp, didn't favor it. Just stood still, spine straight, watching the movement drill unfold like it was a breathing map she'd drawn herself. Across the field, 5 mixed branch candidates carried combat dummies on stretchers, then swapped to ammo can shoulder drags. The wind cut through with fine grit, and whistles from the training towers echoed sharp every 40 seconds. Dust hung in the air like static. On the far side of the course, Staff Sergeant Briggs stomped across the dirt like he owned it. Broad-shouldered, regulation beard shadow, that confident tilt to his jaw, the kind that always meant someone thought they could lead better than the rank standing in front of them. Behind him trailed Corporal Ortega, stocky, all arms and no awareness, and Private First Class Hale, 21 and already cocky, swinging his rifle prop like it was a toy he'd earned too early. They weren't hiding their contempt. They barely even tried. "Must be nice," Briggs muttered, loud enough for half the row to hear. "Getting to bark orders after a year of recovery leave. Can't imagine what the enemy smells like after hiding behind a desk that long." Ortega chuckled. Hale followed suit, half a second too late. Rhea said nothing, just marked her clipboard. Deliberate, even strokes. The kind that don't ask for permission to be calm. Briggs didn't stop. Never did. Heard they screwed your ribs back together with plates. What did they use? Recycled canteen metal? That one earned him a half snort from Ortega. From her post near the comm station, Recruit Chen looked up. She caught the tail end of the sentence. Her eyes shifted between them, then to Rhea, waiting for a reaction. There wasn't one. But Chen noticed something else. The way Rhea's pen moved across the clipboard, not just marking times, but noting names. Positions. The angle of Briggs's approach. The distance Ortega kept. The way Hale's eyes tracked the insults like he was learning from them. Chen had seen instructors take notes before, but this felt different. Clinical. Like documentation instead of evaluation. Across the mat, Petty Officer Hayes stood near the water station, watching the exchange. He'd been at Stryker for 6 years, seen plenty of instructors come through, seen the ones who lasted and the ones who didn't, and he'd never seen anyone absorb disrespect the way Rhea did, not with weakness, with calculation. He made a mental note to stay on the right side of whatever was about to happen. Rhea just clicked the stopwatch. Next pair, drag and shoulder switch, down and back. Time starts now. The corporals moved, half committed. Briggs took longer than necessary to get to the dummy, his boots trailing dirt like punctuation marks. Hale muttered as he passed Chen. Didn't know SEALs came in broken in models. Chen said nothing, but her expression changed. Just enough. On the next lap, Rhea moved closer to observe grip transitions. Still no comment, no emotion. Just the pen, the stopwatch, and the silence of someone measuring something deeper than just speed or form. The kind of silence that makes people nervous without knowing why. Briggs saw it, smirked like he was winning. The desert kept breathing, the brass kept sweating in the sun. But tension? That was Rhea's specialty. She didn't shout, she didn't correct. She just kept her thumb hovering over the stopwatch and her eyes fixed. Not on mistakes, but on the exact moment someone thinks they can get away with one. And everyone on that course could feel it. Something was going to snap. And it wasn't going to be her first. The sun had begun to fall sideways by the time the second circuit started. Shadows stretched across the range, long, thin, and angled through the metal scaffolds. The heat hadn't gone anywhere. It had just changed color, golden now, angrier somehow. Rhea stood at the midpoint line, clipboard down, stopwatch ready. Her voice carried easily, firm, even, no wasted breath. Weighted carry relay, 50 meters down and back. Maintain control of load and spacing. If your form breaks, so does your time. Boots thudded in the dirt. Grunts. Exhale timing. Sand spraying under momentum. The sound of bodies trying to prove something to someone who didn't need the proof. Briggs ran in the second column, muscle and ego wrapped tight together. Haley was just ahead of him, trying too hard to impress. Ortega lagged, shoulders hunched, sweat already streaking his temples. At the 20-meter mark, Hale's grip slipped on the weighted duffel, nearly pulling him sideways. Rhea stepped forward instinctively, 2 strides, to steady it before it slammed into the dirt. "Recenter your stance," she said, calm, professional. Her hand moved toward Hale's wrist to correct his balance, and that's when Briggs came through. He wasn't supposed to be that close. He wasn't supposed to break column spacing, but he broke it anyway, charging hard, pretending to overtake. The sound came first, boots skidding in sand, air splitting, then the impact. His knee drove straight into her ribcage, a clean, brutal line of motion hidden behind the pretense of speed. The hit was too sharp, too square to be an accident. She folded for half a second, breath leaving her chest with a low, involuntary sound. It wasn't a cry, more like air forced through teeth, and then the whisper, low enough for only 2 people to hear. "Let's see if it breaks again." Rhea froze. The world contracted to one sound, a wet, brittle crack just beneath her sternum, not loud, just final. Ortega stopped moving. Hale's duffel hit the ground. Even the whistle from the tower hesitated before blowing again. Chen, at the far end, stared across the field. She had heard that whisper, words carried by wind and timing and the kind of cruelty that doesn't need volume. Rhea's hand went to her side. Her face didn't change, but her breathing shortened. Tight, measured inhales through the nose. The kind of breathing you do when your body's trying to protect something already broken. "Finish your circuit," she said. The recruits blinked, uncertain if they'd heard her right. "I said finish it." Her tone carried no volume, but it cut clean through the yard. Briggs half smirked, hands on his knees pretending fatigue. "Guess that plate didn't hold, ma'am." She looked at him once, flat, unreadable, then clicked the stopwatch, wrote something down, and walked off the line. Every step was measured, deliberate. The pain radiated from her ribs like a slow electrical current, constant, sharp, demanding attention she refused to give it. She could feel the fracture shifting with each breath, could taste copper in the back of her throat from where she'd bitten down too hard, but her gait didn't change, her shoulders didn't hunch. She'd learned a long time ago that the body could scream all it wanted. Command came from the mind. 17 steps from the circuit line to the medical bay entrance. She counted every one. Not because she needed distraction, but because counting kept her focused, kept her from turning around and doing something that would give him exactly what he wanted, proof that he'd gotten to her. No limp, no flinch, just precision in every step, as if refusing to give the pain even a single uneven footprint. Behind her, Hale bent to pick up the duffel, eyes darting toward Briggs like he'd just realized what kind of man he was following. Chen didn't move. The echo of that sentence, "Let's see if it breaks again," stayed in her ears long after the commander disappeared into the blinding white glare of the medbay doors. The medbay at Camp Stryker always smelled like antiseptic and desert air, cold trying to hide inside heat. Rhea sat on the edge of the steel table, boots still on, one hand pressed to her ribs, while the medic slid the X-ray cassette beneath her arm. His hands were efficient, professional, but his eyes gave him away. "Deep breath," he said. She tried. The inhale caught halfway, sharp and shallow. The machine clicked. Once, twice, the medic frowned before the image even finished processing. He didn't need to say it. The break was visible, even through the lead plate from her last surgery, 2 new hairline fractures, right where the rib had been rebuilt, right where it had cracked the first time. "Commander, this isn't something you walk off," he said quietly. "You're looking at a minimum of—" "I'm not looking at anything," she interrupted. Her tone didn't rise. "Just print the film." He hesitated. "Protocol requires—" "I'm protocol," she said, meeting his eyes. "Print it." A few minutes later, she signed the limited duty waiver herself. No painkillers, no rest order. She tightened the tape wrap herself while he cleaned the room. Every movement deliberate, controlled, breathing through pain that would have flattened most men in the field. When he left, she exhaled slowly and peeled back the uniform top. The bruise had already begun to flower under the skin, dark purple turning black along the old scar line. The same spot, same story, just a different ending this time. She let her hand rest over it, and for a moment the walls weren't white anymore. They were mud-brown, cracked, echoing with the memory of Afghanistan. Kandahar Province, 2019. The blast had come from the second story of a blown-out compound. She'd shoved a comms officer out of the doorway just as the wall collapsed. Ribs had gone with it. 5 then. 2 crushed. 3 fractured. She remembered the way the dust had turned to glass in her throat, the weight of the rubble, the sound of her own breathing. Wet, ragged, wrong. And then her CO's voice cutting through the radio static, calm as Sunday morning. "Control isn't silence, Lawson. It's command." She'd stayed conscious through the whole extraction. Directed her own medevac. Gave coordinates while her lung was collapsing. The corpsman later told her most people pass out from the pain. She'd looked at him and said, passing out is a choice. That's what they didn't understand. Pain was just information, and information could be used. The memory faded with the steady beep of a monitor she didn't need. She pulled the tape tighter, wincing once, only once. Outside the curtain, someone hesitated, the shadow of a young recruit, boots half turned away. Chen. Rhea knew the stance of someone deciding whether to knock. "Come in or go," Rhea said without looking up. Chen didn't move, but her voice carried through the curtain. "Ma'am, he said it on purpose. I heard him. Every word." Rhea's hands stilled. "You have a good memory, recruit?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then keep it. You'll need it tomorrow." Chen swallowed hard and backed away. Rhea set her jaw, grabbed a pen, and opened the clipboard on the counter. On a clean sheet, she wrote 3 words in block letters. Control. Pain, ego. Then below it, request authorization. Reflex evaluation, range 47. She signed her name, initialed the risk acknowledgement, and clipped the form to the outgoing stack. Pain radiated through her side like a live wire, but her posture didn't change. If discipline had a sound, it was the click of her pen closing. Final, certain, controlled. The sun had dipped past the ridgeline by the time the mission board cleared her request. Reflex evaluation, range 47. Approved. Signed under the training continuity clause with minimal oversight. No questions asked. Just a digital checkmark beside her name. At 19:30 hours sharp, Rhea walked into the lower briefing room with her clipboard, not limping, not favoring her side, just walking. The floor lights buzzed faintly overhead, a dim hum beneath the rustling of chairs and boots. The 5 names on the assignment list were already seated. Staff Sergeant Briggs leaned back with his arms crossed, chewing a toothpick like it gave him jurisdiction. Ortega was slouched beside him, posture sloppy, but eyes alert. Hale jittery now, something in his rhythm off since that afternoon's drill. And 2 new recruits from the Navy side sat to the back, quiet observers, who hadn't yet learned when to look away. Recruit Chen was positioned at the comms desk, pretending to double-check equipment logs, but her earpiece was already synced, her screen already recording. Rhea stepped up front and dropped the file onto the podium. Not loud, just enough to shift the room's attention. Reflex evaluation, blackout navigation, 0 live fire. You'll move through range 47 in staggered pairs. Target is a beacon hidden somewhere in the simulated village. Teams will rotate. Only direct contact permits engagement. Any action outside protocol, verbal or physical, will be noted. Her tone wasn't cold. It was surgical. Briggs raised a hand like he was asking a favor at a poker game. Careful, Commander. The dark's bad for old injuries. You sure you'll stay vertical? Ortega gave a low laugh. Even Hale didn't smile. Rhea didn't look up. Darkness reveals timing. Timing reveals discipline. She glanced at the monitor. You'll be graded on both. Briggs muttered to Ortega. If she sneezes, her ribs'll snap like chalk. Chen heard it. So did Hale. Neither said a word. As the men signed out their gear, Rhea tapped 2 fingers against Chen's desk. A silent cue. Chen nodded, then slid a small auxiliary device toward her. A backup audio channel recorder. Comm frequencies are open. All teams transmitting live, Chen said quietly. Even private chatters buffered now. Rhea clipped the device into her vest pocket. Good. If they speak freely, let them. Chen's hands trembled slightly as she synced the channels. This wasn't standard protocol. It was premeditation. And she was part of it now. She thought about saying something, asking if this was really necessary. But then she remembered the sound of that knee connecting. The whisper. The way Rhea had walked away like her body wasn't screaming. She kept sinking. Behind them, Briggs checked his weapon prop, laughing with Ortega about something. Completely unaware that every frequency he'd be using was already tagged for documentation. That the dark he was walking into had been prepared specifically for him. Commander, Chen said softly, what if they don't say anything? Rhea looked at her. They will. Men like that always do. They can't help themselves. At 2200 hours, Range 47 went fully dark. A mock village constructed of concrete shells, overturned barrels, and blackout tarps sat under a moonless sky. Lit only by the glow of red light rigs along the outer perimeter. Wind moved through the skeletal door frames and shredded tarps like whispers between ghosts. The night was moonless, the kind of black where breath sounded louder than boots. Rhea stood alone at entry point Charlie with her stopwatch in one hand and thermal goggles slung around her neck. Briggs and Ortega moved first, flash suppressors clipped, weapons props secured. Hale and 1 Navy recruit followed in 10-minute intervals. She didn't brief them again. She didn't remind them of boundaries. She'd already made herself clear, and if they missed the point earlier, the dark would make it unforgettable. Through her thermal goggles, Rhea tracked 3 heat signatures weaving through the simulated village. Briggs, Ortega, and Hale, moving in staggered intervals. They were sloppy. Briggs had already broken formation, charging corners without clearance. Ortega trailed just close enough to say he wasn't responsible. Hale moved with jerky uncertainty, pausing too long at intersections. From the operations station, Chen watched the comms feed buffer every word, every whisper. Her finger hovered just above the red mark hotkey, which tagged audio segments for command review. The mics weren't hidden. The men just forgot they were on, or didn't care. Near the southern wall of the compound, Briggs's voice crackled low over the open frequency. If she steps near me again, I'll finish what I started. Ortega's voice followed, faint and amused. Thought you already did. Nah, I felt the crack, but it didn't drop her. Those ribs'll snap clean this time. I'll make sure of it. Silence on the channel for a beat. Then a soft click. Chen tagging the moment. She didn't look at anyone, didn't flinch, just confirmed the audio buffered, copied, and locked. In her earpiece, a low voice came through. Rhea's. Acknowledged, that was all. No follow-up, no raised tone. But Chen leaned forward instinctively, suddenly aware that something in the air had changed. Out on the range, Rhea adjusted her goggles and stepped out from behind the barrier wall. Her movements were careful, calculated. But even with fractured ribs, she moved with the grace of someone who didn't need permission. Not anymore. The drill hadn't ended, but the lesson was about to begin. Briggs's boots scraped against concrete as he ducked into the shadowed interior of a half-demolished shoot house. A single dim beacon pulsed red in the far corner. His prize. "Found it," he called out. Ortega huffed somewhere behind him, catching up. "Told you it'd be too easy." Briggs reached for the beacon with one hand, smug, arrogant, until a second silhouette stepped through the doorway behind them. No warning, no theatrics, just Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson, framed in the faint bleed of the outside red light, rifle prop slung, NV goggles down. Her voice was calm. "Assessment continuation. Engage only on contact." Briggs froze, then slowly turned. "You sure your ribs can take it, Commander?" He didn't wait for permission. He charged. The move was predictable. Shoulder down, lead foot heavy. Rhea sidestepped before impact, hooked her left arm inside his elbow, redirected the momentum, and dropped her weight to torque his wrist. Briggs collapsed forward, the mat catching his fall with a dull thud. She let go instantly. No flourish. Ortega flinched, stepped forward. "This isn't in protocol." "You're still standing. Comms are open." Ortega hesitated. Briggs grunted, rolled to his feet, and lunged again, this time angrier, sloppier. Rhea rotated, slipped under his right arm, twisted her hips, and swept his legs clean. His back hit the floor harder this time, knocking the air from his chest. She never raised her voice. Hale had just reached the doorway, frozen mid-step. He didn't intervene. Rhea turned to Ortega. "One contact left. Proceed." Ortega lifted both palms. "I'm good," she nodded. "Maintain your position." Briggs tried to push up, groaning. His breath came in short gasps now, ego and oxygen both running thin. "You planned this." But he wasn't done. Not yet. Pride wouldn't let him stay down. He lunged one more time, desperation masked as aggression. This time, there was no technique, just a wild grab for her collar, trying to use size and weight to overwhelm her. Rhea saw it coming 3 moves before it happened. She shifted her center, caught his wrist mid-reach, and used his own momentum to spin him into a standing armbar. Not hard enough to break, just enough to hold. His shoulder socket strained. He gasped. "Yield or break," she said quietly. "Your choice." He tried to twist free. Couldn't. Tried to use his legs. Couldn't. Every movement he made only tightened the lock. "Yield," he finally spat through gritted teeth. She released him immediately. He collapsed forward onto his knees, sweat dripping onto the concrete. Rhea stood over him, face hidden behind her NV goggles, breath clipped but steady. Her hand still hovered near her ribs, fingertips just brushing the edge of the fracture site. "No," she said. "You did." She reached into her vest pocket and pulled out the auxiliary recorder, clipped it off, held it for him to see. Conduct. Documented. Briggs's face twisted, somewhere between rage and disbelief. "You can't use that. You set this up." "You made the threat," she replied. "You bragged about intent. All I did was complete the evaluation." She turned slightly toward the open doorway where Chen now stood, silent witness, headset still active. "Recruit, confirm comms were live?" "Yes, ma'am." "Confirm his words are recorded?" "Word for word." Briggs slumped against the matting. And then, for the first time since the knee, Rhea let her hand fall from her side. She didn't show pain. She showed control. "Consider this contact. Fully documented. 0800 hours sharp. Command Room 2, East Wing. No flags, no ceremony. Just a long rectangular table and a playback monitor already queued. Captain Marcus Rogers, Senior Operations Commander at Camp Stryker, sat at the head, lean, precise, reputation for skipping small talk. On one side, Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson, ribs tightly bound under her pressed uniform, clipboard resting flat in front of her. On the other, Staff Sergeant Briggs, visibly agitated, arms crossed like this was still a contest. Corporal Ortega beside him, quiet, and Private First Class Hale, posted outside the door as a witness, uninvited to speak unless called. Rogers looked to the far end where Recruit Chen sat with a small playback device and a printed transcript packet. "Begin with audio," Rogers said. Chen nodded and hit play. Briggs's voice filled the room, recorded through comms channel 3, range 47. "If she steps near me again, I'll finish what I started. Those ribs'll snap clean this time." Silence. Then Ortega's laugh. Then, "Thought you already did." Another silence, heavier. Rogers folded his hands. "Recruit, was this audio altered in any way?" "No, sir. Captured live through the field recorder. Buffered through comms. Standard auto-log protocol." Rogers looked to Ortega. "Corporal?" Ortega hesitated. I didn't think he meant it seriously. "But he said it." Ortega nodded. "Yes, sir." Briggs leaned forward. "That was banter, dark humor. You've all heard worse in the field." Rogers didn't flinch. "Is that your defense?" "Commander Lawson staged this. She set us up, got us in the dark to—" Rogers raised a hand, the kind of gesture that ends careers mid-sentence, then turned to Rhea. "Why didn't you file a formal incident report after the initial contact?" "Because they would have forgotten it. This way they remember. You came back on fractured ribs to lead a drill." "I led a protocol-verified reflex assessment, Captain. Every contact was initiated. Every response was measured. I have no regrets about my conduct." Rogers tapped the transcript folder once. "But you recorded his." "I didn't need to." She nodded toward Chen. "She did." Briggs opened his mouth again. Ortega didn't follow. Captain Rogers stood slowly. "Intent was established on record. Physical assault followed again by verbal confirmation of intent to escalate." He turned to Briggs. "You are relieved of all instructional duties. Pending final review, you're restricted to admin duty. You'll have no further contact with Commander Lawson or her teams." Then to Ortega. "Your failure to report the comment makes you complicit. Transfer out of the evaluation circuit." Then to Chen. "Recruit, well done." He closed the folder. "Lieutenant Commander Lawson, you've maintained composure, exceeded protocol expectations, and re-established the purpose of this facility's standards." She gave a sharp nod. "Thank you, sir." As Rogers turned to leave, he paused. "You could have filed assault charges. You still could." Rhea didn't move. "I already did." She tapped the transcript. "Just not on paper." The mess hall was louder than usual that afternoon. Not because of laughter, but because of silence, trying to stay hidden behind half-spoken sentences. Forks scraped against trays. Conversations paused mid-chew. And as soon as Staff Sergeant Briggs walked in, uniform sleeves rolled high like nothing had happened, the air shifted. He moved to the serving line. Nobody greeted him, not even Ortega, seated alone at the far table. At the center of the room, 2 Navy recruits leaned in over their half-eaten pasta trays. "It's true," one whispered. Said it over comms. "Gonna snap her ribs again, word for word." "And she still dropped him?" The first one nodded. "Didn't even hit first, just waited. Let him walk straight into it." Across the room, Recruit Chen sat with her headset coiled neatly beside her tray. She didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Everyone already knew she'd made the recording. Sergeant Holt, the logistics NCO, slid into the seat across from her. Ex-Ranger, 2 deployments in Iraq. The kind of weathered you only get from actual combat, not just training ranges. "You know," he said quietly, "we get plenty of loud instructors on this base. But what she did, that was a lesson, not just for them, for all of us." Chen looked up. "You think they'll forget?" Holt shook his head. "Not a chance. You don't forget watching someone break without breaking." He paused, stirring his coffee absently. "I've seen guys lose it after being disrespected. Seen them throw punches, file charges, make big scenes. But her? She just documented it. Let the system do what it's supposed to do." He looked directly at Chen. "That's the difference between reacting and responding. One makes you feel better for an hour. The other changes the whole damn culture." Chen nodded slowly, understanding settling deeper now, and then the hall quieted again as Lieutenant Commander Rhea Lawson walked in, uniform pressed, ribs still taped, Posture perfect. She didn't look around. She didn't scan for recognition. She just moved with the same deliberate rhythm she always did, tray in hand, pace even, breath shallow but controlled. No one said her name. No one clapped. But across the hall, a line of recruits stood a little straighter. Ortega kept his eyes down. Briggs was nowhere in sight. As Rhea passed Chen's table, she gave a single nod. Chen returned it. No smile, no show. Just two people who knew exactly what had been said, what had been done, and why it didn't need to be repeated. Rhea paused just before the exit, as if catching a fragment of conversation midair, then quietly said to no one in particular, "Pain fades, conduct stays on record," and walked out. Would you have stayed silent after hearing someone brag about breaking you on purpose? Do you think discipline hits harder than revenge, especially when the whole room is watching? Let us know in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story reminded you that calm isn't weakness, but control, then hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure the bell icon is turned on so you never miss a mission like this. Share this video with someone who thinks silence is submission. And remind them, some people don't raise their voice when they're angry. They just raise the standard. We upload new stories every day, so watch the next one already appearing on your screen. And I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, with a brand new mission.